You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome, everybody, to the Eternal Tournament Series Season 1 Invitational for 2018. Super exciting. We have our first match coming at you. I'm Gabe, also known as Calimdir, and in the booth with me to start the day off is Sir Rhino.
Yep, I am here. Pojo is hopefully making his way to the booth at some point today, but in the meantime, I'll be doing my best to fill in and bring you some great Season 1 Invitational action.
Yeah, so you guys talked about this match a little bit in the pre-show. We have Grenadins, piloted by SecondBlue, versus Muxosk on FTP Moment, which should be pretty interesting. Mostly seems like it was agreed upon that Grenadins is favored, just a bit grindier in this sort of grindy matchup. Both these decks looking to go long, so we'll see how that goes as players start to get in here.
Yeah, again, as we talked about, Grenadins generally like to get matched up against decks that are either light on threats or the threats they're presenting aren't evasive, and this Moment deck kind of checks off both those boxes. Grenadins can, in a typical draw, grind with the grindiest of decks, even something like Chalice. It can actually bury in card advantage thanks to Stonescar Scrapper. But there's also the games with Grenadins where you never draw a Scrapper, or you don't hit the power to cast your Gear Cruncher. And those are the games that people seem to forget about with Grenadins. And we'll have to see if that crops up here in this matchup.
The biggest thing is that Grenadins tends to do very well against Sandstorm Titan decks because its biggest weaknesses are flyers. Because the Combust is good, but there's just not you don't have room to run that much good removal in Grenadins. There's so many core pieces to the deck, so flyers can really give you a rough time. So it looks like SecondBlue took a mulligan here and drew into pretty slow hand, but I think it's going to be fine in this match.
Yeah, that was a tough mulligan to figure out because you had a 2-drop and a Devour, so you were probably going to hit power, but SecondBlue just wanted to really make sure that he was going to have more than just 2 starting power in the hand and shipped it off. Well, Muxosk has pretty good fixing, card draw, a Hailstorm interaction that looks like exactly the kind of hand they want in this spot.
Yep, Muxosk has all his early game stuff, and then hopefully he'll draw into that with his late game stuff with Wisdom. This one-off scheme showing up for SecondBlue, which could be interesting.
Yeah, we talked about earlier how, there's some really key cards that the Grenadin decks wants to find. Like, once you have used your Devours and Scrappers, you probably find more Scrappers and Gear Crunchers, but it's finding that first Scrapper I find can be tenuous for the Grenadin deck. Yeah. And I guess Scheme helps with that just enough to justify its inclusion here.
Yeah, if you just play out a bunch of Grenadin drones and assembly lines, then get Hailstormed, and then you're out of cards and you have nothing to do, you're just a really, really bad Stonescar aggro deck.
Yeah. So SecondBlue's got a couple options here. Could just Devour the Sparkcatcher to draw 2, or it could use Scheme to dig specifically for 1 card. But the value of Scheme goes up the longer you wait. Like right now, SecondBlue's happy to draw power or threats. They're not really looking specifically for a Gear Cruncher or a Scrapper. They're kind of happy to find either. And I think that's why we're maybe not going to see it. Although the play of Cell, we could see Cell activation Scheme here. I would just be, I don't think it's going to happen.
I have a rule when it comes to cards like Quarry and Scheme and things like that. If I have a favor in my hand and a Quarry in my hand, if the card I'm looking for is power, I don't care that there might be a next one. You just play the favor.
Yeah, that's a very good rule to have, especially against Muxosk, where favor's not killing anything. Here, SecondBlue now prepped the Scrap Tank turn here. Will be able to use Combustion Cell to buff up Scrap Tank out of Hailstorm range. So now Muxosk will be forced to use a Permafrost or an Equivocate, or it could even wombo combo with Purify Hailstorm if they choose here. A lot of different options available to them.
I like the Equivocate line because making a 6-drop is just super expensive, and the likelihood that that 6-drop just gets answered by Permafrost is pretty high.
Equivocate actually keeps it the same cost. It'll be a 5-drop. Yeah. It's not an unstable form kind of thing where it could theoretically upgrade the card. It's turning into a different random 5-drop.
Yeah.
Second
But
Blue.
I like how much tempo Second Blue loses from that.
Yeah, now Second Blue does get to hold up Devour thanks to the power off of Combustion Cell here, so they'll get something out here, although I doubt we'll see the Devour. He's just going to Devour right away to grow Scrap Tank a little more so that Hailstorm won't be able to finish it off here. Really smart play by Second Blue.
I think he could have waited. He could have, like, maybe there wasn't even a Hailstorm coming.
But if you wait, the Scrap Tank is silenced.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true.
So it wouldn't grow. It would have still been a 5/5. So that you kind of have to do it there. And now Muxosk is forced to use the permafrost, it looks like, valuing holding on to this Equivocate.
So that ends up being pretty good because he gets an extra permafrost out of his hand. Little frustrating to have your Scrap Tank get permafrosted, but with the Scrapper in hand, he'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction here. Like, why did Muxosk choose to use Permafrost over something like just a Silence or an Equivocate? And the reason is Permafrost is a lot worse on Stone Scar Scrapper. Stone Scar Scrapper doesn't have to exhaust to activate its ability. It can be Permafrosted and keep churning. So it's important to save your Silences and Transforms more for that card than the Scrap Tank.
Yeah, absolutely. This Torch not looking great in this matchup.
And that's why we saw Second Blue actually discard a Torch to Quarry earlier and just took a Combustion Cell over it because it's just not that useful.
Yeah, in Muxosk's deck, there's not a single target for Torch other than, you know, face. Face is always a target.
Yeah. There we saw Muxosk swing in with the Sandstorm Titan. Second Blue could have bounce blocked. Means Stone Scar Scrapper could have been finished off by a Torch or a Purify, or if they had Hailstorm, they'd both lose their units. But Second Blue didn't want the risk of either of those things happening and just choosing to take 5 damage. You have Scrapper going, you're gaining lots of life. It's not the end of the world.
So this is kind of what Muxosk needs to be happening. He needs to get out these Titans, not let Second Blue, you know, get enough, get a critical mass of chump blockers. But we're just one turn away from Gear Cruncher, and that's kind of all going to go down the drain, and there's just no way he's going to be able to get through that. And we're going to be sitting here with Second Blue with Scheme and Quarry and Scrapper, and he's going to be able to find all the cards he wants, and it's going to be on Muxosk to find an answer.
Yeah, and Second Blue here with double Gear Cruncher in hand is just super happy to be throwing as many Grenadins away as possible to just prime them up because they're all going to get replaced. And here he conveniently gets to play 3 strength worth of Grenadins out, so you can double block a Titan and finish one off with a Torch.
Yeah, so Torch, you know, at least finishing off this Titan, but still not where he wants to be. Second Blue, so he didn't Quarry at the end of that turn? He was holding up Torch, I guess?
Yeah,
okay.
Yep, the plan was to double block and Torch a Titan, alleviate pressure again. Muxosk, this Moment of Creation deck just is not that good at pressuring generally. But Talir's Intervention will be able to save this Titan as it's a Sentinel.
See, the reason I question that play is just because you know you're going to get, you know, 9 power worth of Grenadins the next turn. So losing your Grenadins to a chump block wasn't that big of a deal.
Right. But you could also just take out a Titan while chump blocking with them, and he just valued that more than quarrying for whatever. As you were saying, like sometimes you can just wait to quarry. Although here we see the Gear Cruncher then quarry ordering, which is a little odd because you could have potentially discarded a Grenadin to the Void and actually filled up your entire board there. So a little questionable in the ordering there, but pretty minor. And ooh, a Moment of Creation off the top for Muxosk.
The Hailstorm finally comes out, but that just means this next Grenadin is next Gear Cruncher is gonna fill up the board. If he even needs to play it, I mean, he could just Assembly Line, Scheme, you know. All right, looks like the Gear Cruncher is going to come down if he trades the first one away. Yeah.
And if Second Blue draws undepleted power, he would have been able to Gear Cruncher plus activate, but that is not the case here. And instead, he's just going to deploy some other random cards, wait for Gear Cruncher to be able to activate the turn it comes down.
So there are 6 spells in Muxosk's Void, I believe. So not the biggest Sentinels from this Moment of Creation.
Right, but Muxosk sees the number of cards in Second Blue's hand and decides he's got to apply the pressure now, can't let this game, you know, drag out too much longer. and decides to play the pair of 6/6s.
Yeah, and now Second Blue is gonna actually he still doesn't even need to play the Gear Cruncher. He has Assembly Line, he has Combust. He can sit on this for a little bit.
Yeah, but it looks like we are going to see the Gear Cruncher come down and start picking off these units. So there it is. Gear Cruncher has 3 power available, and it's up to him if he wants to take out a 6/6 or a 5/6. I would take out an animated Sentinel rather than Sandstorm Titan, even though it has endurance, because it is grounding flyers, which is good for you for now.
Yeah, I mean, is there a flyer in? Oh yeah, there's Curiox, of course.
Yeah, again, it's minor. I think wanting to take out the endurance unit is also super reasonable there, so it's one way or the other. But Muxosk finds another moment of creation, does not cast it, instead starts digging and finds a permafrost, which can shut off this Gear Cruncher.
Yeah, so the permafrost is key there, and the second moment is going to start helping a lot. The first one doesn't make that much of a difference. Once you get a critical mass of these Sentinels where chump blocking just doesn't hold up for enough turns, then you start making a dent in the board.
Second Blue wisely throwing a third Grenadin in front to overblock by 1 just to not get blown out by a torch there. And now it passes over to Second Blue, and he'll dig with a scheme. We can't see what they're looking at, but we'll find their pick soon enough.
Yeah, we won't be able to see what he passed because, the cards don't go into the void. We can almost certainly assume he's not looking at a Stone Scar Scrapper, or this choice would have been made a long time ago. Instead, it's just an Annihilate. Not exactly the most exciting pick, because it doesn't hit animated Sentinels. They don't have a faction, so they don't get hit by Annihilate. It only hits Sandstorm Titan in this matchup. That's the only target. Yep, and there's only 2 left in Muxosk's deck.
Yeah, so that must have been some pretty bad cards, which at least Scheme then put on the bottom of your deck.
Yep. Probably just a bunch of power, if I had to guess.
And Second Blue doesn't want to put any more Grenadins on the board because Muxosk plays Hailstorm, which is the draw for the turn here. So then he's got to decide, does he play 2 big threats down, or but no, goes with the Hailstorm.
Yeah, and I think the Hailstorm is the safer play, right? You can why play? I guess you get your damage in a turn earlier, but you do lose quite a bit of life in the process. And I don't think that's worth it.
Right, they would have blocked 2 units, or heaven forbid, like Second Blue hasn't drawn a Madness yet, and that would have also could have put you in a really rough spot. Although waiting to cast Moment doesn't really make that any better. It's more casting Hailstorm first makes this moment bigger, as now they come down as 9/9s instead of 8/8s.
Yep, and that is important versus Scrap Tank.
Yeah, so this Moment deck is doing a good job of keeping up with the Grenadins. They've dealt with 2 Gear Crunchers and a Stone Scar Scrapper, and Second Blue has not found another Scrapper yet, and that's allowing Muxosk to keep up.
But oh wow, and the third moment comes out. I was gonna say Second Blue I still think is a little bit favored just because he's got plenty of chump blockers in the tank. It's gonna be difficult for Muxosk to attack into the Scrap Tank now, and he's got a few more cards in hand, keep drawing. But with this third moment of creation, Second Blue's draws are gonna have to be very good.
Yeah, and that Scheme essentially whiffing, and then the follow-up draws being so weak, whereas Muxosk just has top decked Moment of Creation, Hailstorm, Moment of Creation, Moment of Creation. Like, that's been their draw steps. That's pretty fantastic. And here we're going to see Equivocate come out to reset this Scrap Tank back into a random unit and put Muxosk in a commanding position.
I'm not sure what that Combustion Cell activation was for. I guess so that he could get around some removal, but
yeah, I guess so you could block with Scrap Tank on a 9/9 and not get finished off by Torch before your other Grenadins die.
Yeah. Technically, though, he could have used Annihilate for that.
That is true. that is very much true. But yeah, we're going to see Equivocate come out on the Scrap Tank, turn it into a random 5-drop. Second Blue's got to hope it's something good. Field Captain isn't the worst.
Yeah, definitely worse cards to get in a Grenadin deck where you had gotten a lot of attacks in. So we'll at least trade with one of these 9/9s eventually if the game comes to that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, Second Blue is running out of blockers, and these are really big Sentinels. Even at 24 health, you can only take a few hits. But hey, speaking of big Sentinels, Annihilate
Speaking of
finally
annihilate
finds a target.
targets.
Yeah.
But this crest could be, that's go right to the bottom. Get that out of here.
Yeah. Oh boy. Second Blue needs to draw basically a Gear Cruncher next turn.
Yeah, Gear Cruncher is really the only card that does it because we're a little too light on the board for Scrapper. And there's just so much pressure coming out of Muxosk. This is what I was afraid of from Muxosk's deck. Is just once you get the critical mass of animated Sentinels, it's just no amount of chump blockers is going to get you there unless you're also putting back the hurt. But when you're completely on the defensive, like Second Blue is here, you're going to run out of resources very quickly.
Yeah, the key here was Muxosk did have the tools to deal with not only a couple scrap tanks, but 2 Gear Crunchers and things like that. And now he's got 2 Heart of the Vaults in a row, and yeah, this assembly line is not going to cut it. So Second Blue not finding enough of the key cards, finding too much of the filler between all of these random 1/1 Grenadins. And that's what we were talking about. If you don't find enough of the real haymakers, you can end up short, and that's what we saw in this game. No madness even, which could have been key with a combustion cell in play and players kind of racing at a spot.
So post board from Muxosk's side. Did you guys talk about the post board matchup at all?
Not a lot. We didn't go too far in depth, although there are some intriguing options going on for both players. So let's start with Muxosk here, who is up 1-0 now.
Yeah. So the interesting cards to me are obviously the one of Lightning Storm and the one of Rock Slide.
Okay.
And potentially even the Rain of Frogs. I think this matchup showed it's slow enough for that card to make a difference.
Yeah.
And then the other card that I'm thinking about is maybe Caleb's Choice. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, Sunken Tower seems like not bad in this matchup.
Sunken Tower is a little risky because you don't have that many threats, and they have a good amount of removal. It depends on how much removal you think they're taking out. Like that game, I think Second Blue drew a lower than average amount of removal for the Grenadin deck, right? Sure. 0 madness, only 1 combust that game. So it was a little atypical. But yeah, the Lightning Storm Rock Slide, sure, they can clean up random Grenadins, but they're not really killing what you care about. So I don't know if they're good enough. I do think the Rain of Frogs is nice. You've got the window. If you can hit Scrapper or Gear Cruncher, that's good. Notably, Second Blue is only playing 3 Scrappers in the list, not the full 4, which is a little surprising. And then, yeah, Caleb's Choice is really nice against, Madness and Devour, but is it hitting enough else? It can't even hit Bloodright Khalees. And then post-board, do you think Second Blue's going to bring in Flamestoker? I think that's the big tiebreaker to whether or not you think Caleb's Choice could come in here.
Yeah, it can counter a lot of spells. It can counter most of the removal and, assembly line and things like that. But that's not really, it's not like a power include or anything. It's mostly about, does Muxosk have enough cards that he just doesn't want to see at all in his main deck? And if that's the case, then, like something Polymorph does, answer any of the important cards, so it's still good enough, and you have all these sweepers. It's hard to. I think Torch is the card that I think looks the worst in Muxosk's main deck.
Yeah, for sure. It's not really killing anything you care about. It can combine with Hailstorm to finish things off like Scrapper, but so can Purify or double Hailstorm or what have you. And on its own, it's just not dealing with any of efficiently any of the cards you actually want to kill. It's not functioning as a removal spell, and this deck doesn't really care about it as reach. There's spots where you can use it to blow out double blocks, but I don't think that you want that to be part of your game plan.
Yeah. Before we move on to Second Blue sideboard, I just want to say I really am sold on this Sunken Tower just because it's super slow. Don't get me wrong. It is very slow, and if you are behind, it does nothing to win you the game. But in the situation where you have 1 or 2 units on the board and Second Blue is still waiting a second to try and draw the Scrappers, the Gear Crunchers, that card will get you the critical mass of Sentinels or Sandstorm Titans you need on the board, and then the Crystallize effect versus a deck that is just chump blocking you for all of eternity is very real.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have too much time to go over Second Blue's sideboard choices here as the match is getting back underway. But I will say there is a whole lot of cards that Second Blue can bring in here that I like. And we see some of them in the opening hands. 3 copies of Sabotage in Second Blue's sideboard. Those are coming in. It's all about protecting the cards that really matter against this control style deck. We see a Scrap Heap come in, which is a Flamestoker-esque effect in terms of just giving you more pressure, being a strong card against tap-out style control decks. Although this Moment Curios's deck has a good amount of fast speed interaction.
Yeah, and the biggest card I think to mention is Torn of Spiders. I think that card just ruins Muxosk.
Yeah.
And then also that Second Blue no longer has to play with torches.
Right. Yeah. Second Blue presumably took out torches, though we speculated Muxosk was going to take out torches, but we see one in hand there. This Sabotage is going to see that as well, but also an Equivocate and a Flamestoker, which came in from Muxosk as a hard to interact with way to finish this game. We talked about in the average game, we think Muxosk will have trouble finishing it off, and Flamestoker can give them consistent pressure that can't be chump blocked.
Yeah, and it's good for a lot of the same reasons that I was talking about Sunken Tower for. It's just that it helps get to that critical mass, and it just keeps putting on pressure.
Right, and it requires less setup than Sunken Tower, right? You don't need to have a unit already in play. It'll start making them for you, and those units will have Overwhelm built in. Now, it can't play defense at all, but Sunken Tower gives your units Reckless, so it's not helping that cause either.
Yep. So early Devour is going to be good here. Second Blue still needs to... All right, Gear Cruncher is good, but he's missing the Combustion Cell. It's going to be a little bit of a slow start because of that.
There's a real chance Combustion Cell came out post-board, as it's not as exciting in these grindy, matchups, because it's accelerating your game plan, but do you really need to accelerate it? We saw it can lead to some nice scenarios in terms of letting you deploy your Scrap Tank sooner so that it dodges Hailstorm right away. But
I'm not the most experienced Grenadin player, but from the games that I played, I really didn't like Combustion Cell, and then I realized, it's nice to have Madness always be a removal spell, because you just can't always have Devour, you can't always have Combust, and just having the consistent sacrifice effect for Scrap Tank and things like that really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I agree. That is the nicest thing with Combustion Cell is occasionally it'll accelerate out some of your threats, or like a turn 4 Flamestoker is really sick. But it's more about, as you said, it makes your Madness, your inconsistent cards slightly more consistent.
There's Caleb's Choice from Muxosk.
That is there, so they could counter this Devour, but wouldn't be shocked to see that maybe hit the Scrap Heap at some point too.
Yeah, I don't know if Scrap Heap is... I guess I didn't think about it. I was like, Scrap Heap's like pretty good. He gets to make 1/1 extra Grenadins, extra Grenadin. I'm like, oh wait,
no.
Gear Cruncher just fills your board with Grenadin and you attack for 1 billion. I forgot.
Yeah. All your Grenadin have charge, so your Gear Cruncher can fill the board and swing for 14 damage in the late game. Scrap Tank, you can plop it down, it can swing right away if you start sacrificing Grenadin on the same turn. But in the meantime, you can also just activate Scrap Heap here if you want and keep hitting. Although Second Blue does want to keep hitting power, so there's a chance Pharaoh's Favor comes out here, but no, just going to activate the Heap and deploy the Fire Sigil.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, it would be nice to be able to get to this Gear Cruncher next turn, like you said, but you're not going to play it next turn, so what's the point?
Yeah, and now by holding Favor, you have the chance to play Scrap Tank and favor one of your own Grenadin to grow it. And there's a Torrent of Spiders. All right, there's some strong stuff here in Second Blue's hand, but they all kind of require setup, and none of them have been set up properly.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be one of these Scrap Tanks gets kind of thrown to the wolves here. Because otherwise he doesn't have much to do, and he needs to get some stuff onto the board to get, he needs to get through that first Hailstorm or whatever is going to come out before he can start deploying the Gear Crunchers and things like that.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot for Second Blue because he's going to be under a lot of pressure with Flamestoker. Muxosk has to love how this game has been set up so far. Now he's got the Flamestoker down under virtually no pressure and can back that up with Torch, Hailstorm, Heart of the Vault. All of it's here at his disposal.
Getting rid of that scrap tank is actually pretty big because that removes that threat of that big gear cruncher. If like Second Blue claws his way back into the game with some scrap tanks and a lot of good blocks, there isn't that threat of a bunch of damage out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. And here it comes, the first of many Infernuses that we'll see this game.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, this is a card that Flamestoker is actually seeing a decent amount of play in today's tournament. Not much main deck, but a lot in the sideboard. It's a really strong sideboard card against like harsh rule decks, but it's so bad against time mid-range decks that it's at a risk to play it. But even in those matchups, if you are main decking it, it can be quite strong in combination with cards like Torch and Hailstorm, because even if, say, a 6/7 blocks it, if you do block it, you're at a risk of it being finished off by other spells.
Okay, so this Sabotage is actually going to be really good for Second Blue here. He gets to see the Hailstorm, he gets to see the Moment, and he gets to see the Intervention. All those are important cards just to know that are in Muxosk's hand. And then also he gets to take one, which is obviously huge. But
yeah, it's funny because if you take any spell other than Moment gets better. But I think he does take the Moment. I think there was a strong argument to try and take the Hailstorm out so that your Torrent of Spiders gets better.
I think if it wasn't for Infernus, if it wasn't for Flamestoker, I would just take the Moment of Creation, no second thoughts. But because you're already under pressure, it's going to be hard to grind through these, the Hailstorm and the Intervention and the Torch and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then Second Blue didn't even follow up with any cards, just simply played nothing. Like, when do you think Muxosk is going to play the Hailstorm and Torch that are already in hand if you're not going to be playing out the Scrap Tank or Torrent or something?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what he's saving Varus Fever for, because it's not like there's a target. I mean, there's like, unless he's saving it to combo with like...
Yeah.
I have no idea.
The problem here is you were saving it to Varus Favor, one of your own units, but your opponent has a Torch up. So if you Varus Favor your own Grenadin, they're going to Torch in response, and that's what we're going to see out of Muxosk here.
Yeah.
And crucially, Muxosk found a second Hailstorm, and that's, I think, going to really make this a difficult game for Second Blue to win. It was already a tenuous spot. Muxosk is down to 13, but he's just hitting in such big chunks every turn.
Yeah, and Second Blue, once again, not finding any madness. I don't think it would do as much here with the Flamestokers, but still would help deal with this this Heart of the Vault that's just doing so much damage here.
Yeah, so Gear Cruncher can come down here and fill up the board, but you're at... I mean, Second Blue doesn't know about the second Hailstorm, of course.
Yeah, he saw the first one, but the second one, if he just plays Torrent of Spiders, I'm like, all right, well, we're fine here. It'll be fine. He just dies.
Yeah, it is. This is a tricky spot for Second Blue to be in. And now with the scheme coming out, that's probably going to spell his death because of the... Ooh, okay, well, there's a Combust off this scheme, so... The Combust on Heart of the Vault will keep Second Blue alive if they so choose to use it.
Yeah, I was going to say, he doesn't know he needs to cast it, which is a big deal here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Muxosk actually is still fine with this. Can Talir's Intervention this Heart of the Vault back to hand if they so desire, but instead going to save Talir's Intervention as a silence/utility spell is okay with the threat of this Infernus going forward, and instead wants to use the silence on bigger problems.
And I guess doesn't want to go to 6 to get double torch potentially.
Yeah, because like double blocking to play around like them torching a Direfang Spider doesn't make any sense because the Infernus has Overwhelm. Yeah. All right, well there's the Scrapper, but don't know if it's gonna be able to dig Second Blue out of this, as here comes the Gear Cruncher, and that fills up the board, but that's just gonna get swept away by Hailstorm.
Yeah. And that's gonna be 2-0 for Muxosk here.
Yeah, wow. In a pretty convincing fashion too, but that was an on-curve Flamestoker, and you can really see what that card is capable of when you back it up with the correct support. The Grenadins just could not withstand the pressure from that card.
Yeah, and Grenadins, they can grind, but not when their resources are being taxed every turn. And both games, SecondBlue had fairly slow starts. I mean, we saw, Muxosk play Flamestoker before SecondBlue even had a relevant play the entire game.
Yeah, and
So
I think SecondBlue just held on to some of the units in hand for too long, trying to be too cute, playing around removal. Like, you just at some point have to bite the bullet and let one of your scrap tanks die to a hailstorm if you want to have a shot at coming back in that game.
Yeah, definitely. But that's gonna do it for that game. I'm not sure. Are we doing backups?
Oh yeah, we have Kroge versus NiamsteR, which looks like there were some delays in starting it, so that means we'll actually have a shot to jump in here. So I'm gonna jump in from Kroge's perspective. It looks like we have NiamsteR's hand cam set up. I'll get word if what I'm saying is incorrect. But let's jump in. And all right, so Kroge is up 1-0. This is Argenport versus Feln. And yeah, let's see. An In Cold Blood just got sabotaged. All right.
Yeah, so I see so like you said, Argenport versus Feln. I kind of like the more removal heavy deck in this sort of mid-rangey matchup, the deck that has Wisdom of the Elders. But I think before the change to Protect, I would lean in Argenport's favor. But now with Protect, kind of falling to the wayside, I think the matchup gets a lot better for Feln, even with the loss of Vera.
Right. And while that may be true, it turns out Kroge does have a game up on NiamsteR. This is game 2. So the Argenport decks got the first win, but their hand's not looking so great here. A couple of weapons, a Slay and a Protect. I mean, if they find the right threat, this can turn into a really serious hand, but the problem is right now they don't have a threat. NiamsteR, in the meantime, is not under a ton of pressure and can just shoot off a Wisdom and then start dropping Black Sky Harbinger. So it looks like a pretty clean game plan from them.
Yeah, and Lightning Strike is interesting. I haven't taken a good look at Argenport or Kroge's Argenport list, but I'm wondering what the targets are. Okay, so he's playing the
basically everything.
Bruised by God. Yeah, Bruised by God list. Hits Crown Watch Trader when it's attacking. Like this, it's great.
Yeah. The switch from Impending Doom to Trader makes your Permafrost worse, but your Lightning Strike's better. Lightning Strike can even hit a Crown Watch Trader with an Inquisitor's Blade on it. So that's a pretty big deal. And it kills all of their 2 and 3 drops, of course. So I can respect keeping Lightning Strike in this matchup nowadays.
So taking a look at NiamsteR's list, okay. I was wondering if he went up to Channel of Tempest Zindal's Gift, or if he was just sort of topping out at around sort of a mid-range list with Daraka and things like that. But yeah, he goes up. He's playing 3 Daraka, but he's also playing the Channel of Tempest to finish. So it's definitely still pretty controlling. And a ton of card draw still. Doesn't have Nocturnal Observer, and only playing 2 Film Bloodcaster, which I think is fine in a metagame that is so full of mid-range decks.
And I'm getting word that this delay currently might be due to some sideboarding issues or something. I'm trying to look into what exactly is the holdup here. NiamsteR is communicating some things. Yeah, so we're gonna work on clearing that up, and then we'll either be able to resume action or deal with it appropriately. So let's look at their whole list here. NiamsteR, I don't know, Lightning Strikes are in their deck. Same with Harbinger. I'm not seeing any cards that
I think they just mis-sideboarded, but I could be misinterpreting.
Oh wait, Rindra is not in their list at all.
Oh
yeah, so that's almost certainly going to be a game loss for NiamsteR.
Oh yep.
Yeah, Rindra is not in NiamsteR's 90 anywhere.
Whoops.
So it looks like they picked some sort of old sideboard or something like that rather than their current one for this tournament. And we'll get our top men, aka Rekenners, on it to deal with it.
Top Rekenners.
Yeah, the best Rekenners. And also the worst Rekenners. But
So if this is a
take
game
what you
loss, that's going to be 2-0 for Kroge then.
Yeah, again, I haven't got an official word. This is my speculation at the moment, but that's I mean, I see aReNGee in play. I don't see it in NiamsteR's list.
Yeah.
I don't think this will be too complicated, although it is rather unfortunate.
Yeah. And while it'd be nice to see, players play out this game, it wouldn't really be fair to Kroge to, take the game that he was potentially about to win and then make it play a game that he would potentially lose.
All right, so there it is, confirmed game loss. So not the most exciting backup match. Kroge will take it 2-0. An unfortunate start for NiamsteR there, but it happens. Sometimes you misclick the wrong thing or set up incorrectly. It's digital tournaments are a little tricky in this game because we have to jump through so many hoops to get it to work right. There's no real tournament mode, and it can happen from time to time. But the good news is, if there is some good news here, there's still 6 more rounds to go. You're not eliminated until you lose 4 games in this Swiss. We're doing a bit of a different format today where normally you just play it all out. This is a semi-elimination Swiss where once you hit 4 losses, you're dropped from the tournament. You don't play any future rounds. So whoever the first 0-4 is after round 4, they're out. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out today.
I mean, effectively, it's kind of the same as Swiss normally is.
Right.
It's just when you're mathematically eliminated from making top 16. But we're just simplifying the process. But unless there's some information that I don't know, I think that's our coverage for round 1 of the Swiss.
Yeah, that was the final match. So we'll wrap this up and get ready for the next round here at the Season 1 ETS Invitational.